In the next few days on the program, I'll be chatting with well-known author and the former speechwriter for Paul Keating, Don Watson, about his latest book. He's about to release a book called The Bush, which explores Australia's relationship with the bush, how it's shaped society and the Australian psyche, and the realities of rural life versus the myths. Now, as part of it, it's a very small part of the book, but it got my attention. As part of it, he explores our attitude towards snakes and argues that our fear is irrational, perhaps unjustified. So, as we head into another snake season, we thought today we would discuss that fear that many of us have of snakes and discover how justified it is. Dr. Robert Johnson is a reptile expert and director of the Australian Veterinary Association. Robert, welcome to the program.
Thank you, and welcome.
Merv Symons is also with me, a sheep farmer on South Australia's Yorke Peninsula. Hi, Merv.
How are you going, Cameron?
Good. Have you spotted any snakes lately?
A fortnight or so ago, early in the season, I did notice a brown on the move, yes.
I imagine you'd be accustomed to run-ins with them?
Oh, yes, you see them occasionally, but fortunately the brown is a fairly timid snake, and he usually doesn't give us a great deal of problem, as long as you see him and keep clear of him.
Do you have many problems, though, to do with snakes?
Oh, we do from time to time. You'll hear of someone, not so much humans, but dogs getting hit by the brown, and yeah.
Your own dogs?
I have lost one or two that I know of. A few years ago I found a pup in an area that would have possibly been snake. There was no other explanation for it. Dead, and certainly I'm 99% certain it was snake.
So you're not sure because you don't see the bite. I take it you think the dog's with you 1 minute.
You don't see the bite in the fur, and it was dead before I found that one, and not much you can do about it from there, of course. And but certainly the area was under a sheep shed where I was feeding sheep, and would have been conducive to mice and grain, spillage and mice being around, and a snake, and
yep.
Anything can happen from there, of course.
Yeah, you have grain, you get mice, you get snakes.
That's the story. Yeah. Yep.
The dogs fight back though, don't they? They don't always come out the loser.
Don't always come out the loser. I can tell you a story. A few years ago, I was in Adelaide for the day and came back late in the afternoon to feed the dogs to go out to another meeting, and went down and found a snake through the cage wire, a ground level cage. The snake threaded through there, and a pregnant bitch in the cage behind where the snake was. And naturally my thought was that the snake was dead, by the way. It would have been fairly unlikely that the dog would have managed to kill the snake without getting hit. Apparently she did. She was fine, as we monitored her for several hours to check, and she was fine, but it was quite a scary little moment there for a while. Yeah,
I bet. So how do you view snakes then? Are they a sign of good health in the landscape, or would you rather not have them about?
Probably I'd rather not have them about, but they don't worry me out in the paddocks, but once they get in around houses with around buildings and stuff where you've got dogs and kids and children and so forth, I get a little bit fidgety about that one.
Yeah, fair enough. You draw the line at the house.
Oh. Yes, for sure.
So Merv Symons is with me, a sheep farmer on Australia's Yorke Peninsula. We're discussing the attitude we have towards snakes in this country for a couple of reasons. One, it's the start of snake season for many parts of the country. I just had my first encounter with one. And also because I'll be chatting with Don Watson in the next few days about his book, The Bush, in which he suggests that maybe our fear of snakes is a little overstated. Dr. Robert Johnson is with me from the Australian Veterinary Association. Robert, how would you describe our Australia's relationship with snakes?
Well, I think Don Watson is quite accurate. Probably after a lifetime of dealing with politicians, it's safer to deal with snakes. I might just say that. And any criticism of snakes is irrational and unjustified. It's all about education, Cameron, and knowing the behaviour of snakes. And Merv's right, they're best just left alone, and you understand what they feed. So the brown's after mice, and say tigers and and red bellies, they're after frogs and other reptiles because they're mainly frog eaters. So you're going to find them around waterways, and creeks, and dams, and ponds. A situation that we find every summer is close to civilization. Red-bellied black snakes quite often get caught in that netting that people have over their fish ponds to stop the birds from striking fish, and then the red-bellies go in there looking for frogs, and they get caught up in the poor things. So then they're taken to the vet, and they have to be disentangled from the netting. But I've seen dogs that have been bitten by snakes that come in, and the snakes come in with them, and on one occasion we saved the dog and the snake, so that was what Don Watson would call a win-win situation.
Yeah. But so I had my first encounter just a weekend before last. Had the kids out on a bushwalk, and there's a snake out on the path that didn't want to go too far. It eventually went away, but the reaction is to be protective of the kids and a little scared of what might happen. That's fairly rational, isn't it?
That is really important. If you're out, say, walking your dog and with your kids, obviously their safety is paramount. The real risk with a dog is they tend to get quite excited when they see a snake, and they'll go for it, and then it's very difficult to keep them calm as you sort of very quickly take them to the vet, or you wanted to monitor their behaviour. So whereas say if a human is unluckily bitten by a snake, we know that we should remain calm at all costs, and this can then complicate, I guess, the chances of dogs surviving snake bite too, if the blood starts pumping.
In Don Watson's book, he makes the point that it's the attitude, the fear of snakes is quite a European trait. Where do you think our fear, in some cases hatred, of snakes stems from?
Well, I think it's biblical and probably even pre-biblical. That's for sure. This really the superstition towards snakes and some other animals too, such as cats. The only way to deal with that, I guess, is for more and more education, and I see that happening where more and more people are in awe of snakes and they respect them. More people get into trouble if they try to catch snakes, and I think increasingly we know not to want to kill the snake, but perhaps just check it out, and then the person and the snake goes on their merry way. Situations occur where people are bitten if they try to catch a snake, or obviously if they're both surprised by each other's presence, and then the snake might just strike out of fear. But most of the time, as Merv says, the snake just wants to get out of your way.
Merv, your preference for not having the snakes around the house, that stemmed from reading the Bible or from seeing your dogs get struck?
More wanting to protect the dogs, of course. Traditionally we've never been great lovers of snakes, as the other gentleman has said, but my paramount concern is safety for the dogs and any children, grandchildren that are visiting or anything along those lines, and that's the area you protect.
Yeah. When you say protect, how do you protect the area? What do you do?
Well, I haven't tried them. They tell me the ultrasonic things do work quite well, but you just keep grass mowed short around the place, so if there is one, you've got a chance of seeing him, and the dogs are housed all I possibly can up off the ground in raised cages, so there's less chance of the snake coming in contact with the dog.
Yeah. You got chooks, Merv?
No, that's partly why I haven't got chooks, so that there's not that feed mice type scenario around to harbour them, sort of thing. Yep.
Robert, we're seeing more and more people, a city thing as well as a country thing, keeping things like chooks in the back garden. That must elevate the risk to some extent.
It does, definitely, because you're going to attract those rodents, but you also attract pythons, and pythons are great methods of pest control. So that's another snake group that we obviously haven't discussed, and they're very commonly kept as pets as well. So if you've got aviary birds or you have chickens, you're really going to increase the risk. You're going to have snakes around, so you've got to be really strict with containing all your feed, not having spare feed sort of around the place, and keeping your chickens on suitable substrate, so you're not encouraging rats and mice to be around.
Mm. What do the stats actually say about the dangers of snakes? How many bites a year and serious injury or fatality do we see as a result?
I'm not sure on the exact figures, but since anti-venom has been available, and I think the first commercial anti-venom was produced in 1930, around 1930s, it started to be produced. We've had far less, obviously, fatalities, and more and more people, I guess live close to hospitals and can seek care as quickly as possible. But I know that of the humans that are bitten, only a portion of those that are bitten receive anti-venom, because sometimes they get what's called a dry bite, or insufficient venom is delivered to deliver a toxic reaction, or they may have been bitten by a snake that obviously is venomous.
So a dry bite's no venom injected, is it?
That's exactly right.
Mm.
Yep.
Is that common?
It is. It is reasonably common. I deal with a lot of herpetologists, and I know of more than one person who has had a dry bite. So there might just be a scrape on the skin or something like that, where it hasn't actually been injected, or there might have been sufficient venom injected.
So all in all, we should be grateful that the demeanour, the relatively not friendly but shy nature of Australian snakes versus, say, in what you might find in Africa or Asia.
I think so. Like brown snakes and taipans can be quite aggressive, but I think it's important just to respect them and not antagonise them, and don't try to catch them. As a veterinarian that has practised in the rural-urban fringe for many, many years, I can think of many times of people ringing me and saying, well, I've got a snake in the backyard and the dog's in here, what should I do? And the first thing I say is, send your husband down the road to get some milk. And they say, what's that got to do with it? I said, just get him out of the house. He'll want to catch it.
Yeah, he'll grab a shovel, and that's not what
exactly.
You do. Yeah.
And even if you try to grab a shovel or something, try to kill it, people have been bitten doing that. Well, you shouldn't kill them anyhow. You should sort of, I guess, understand their behaviour, clean up around the house, so make it less hospitable for the snake to actually seek refuge around your house. And then if you find a snake, try to have it relocated. There are rules and regulations about that, but there are plenty of people around here, professional snake catchers, that can do it for you, or wildlife carers.
There you go, Merv. Next time you spot one around the house, go and get some milk, eh?
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Get out of the house.
Yeah. All right, Merv. Good luck with the farming and stay clear of snakes. Merv Symons, who's a farmer on the Yorke Peninsula of South Australia, and Dr. Robert Johnson. Thanks very much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cameron.
Reptile expert and director of the Australian Veterinary Association.